Good afternoon, everybody who is watching us for this new PEROSH webinar. Welcome. Good afternoon, that is meant for all the participants from Europe. Possibly we also have participants from other continents, so in the US and South America it probably will be good morning. And for those further east of The Hague in the Netherlands, where we are currently based, it will be good evening or maybe even good night. Welcome. We have another webinar. This time the theme is focused on a specific target group of our PEROSH institutes, our PEROSH researchers community, namely the young researchers. So we have now three presentations from researchers who are busy with their PhD, and they will share their findings with you. So this is the young gang of the PEROSH research community, I would say, and I think it's great. I saw their presentations, what they would like to share with us. Now these three researchers, I will present them to you in the next few minutes. We're also participating in our research conference in Stockholm last year, where we celebrated our anniversary of 20 years of existence of PEROSH. I would like to invite you, if you are interested, have a look at our website, our YouTube feed, where you will find all presentations of that event. And these three researchers that you will see now were also participating and even competing in a Young Researchers Award. And Julia Linke is one of the three speakers today, and she won one of those rewards. But it was a close call with the others, so that is why we also invited Stavros and Martin to present their findings, because they also had great presentations last year in Stockholm. But the Stockholm Research Conference is only for PEROSH members, so this was a closed event, and now the presentations will be for a much wider public. Some household rules. If you have a question or a remark, or you need some clarification, please post this in the chat. Probably most of you are familiar with this procedure. I will check this chat regularly and ask these questions to the speakers where relevant. Furthermore, to avoid questions on this, all the three presentations will be uploaded to our repository. This is a free online repository that you can access through the PEROSH website, and we will post a news item on it where we refer to the three presentations that we will see this afternoon. Okay, without further ado, then let's start, and we will start with our colleague from Denmark, Stavros Kyriakidis. He works at the NFA in Denmark, and his presentation will be on low back pain among eldercare workers, and what is the occupational and leisure time physical activity, the so-called sweet and sour spot. I'm really curious to learn what this means. Stavros is currently a PhD student at the National Research Center for the Work Environment. This is NFA, our Danish member of PEROSH, and at the Department of Sports Science and Clinical Biomechanics at Southern Denmark University. His PhD project explores how daily occupational physical behaviors are associated with low back pain, healthcare utilization and medication usage among Danish blue-collar workers. His research interest includes epidemiology of 24 hours physical behaviors in blue-collar workers, with a special focus on work domain, analysis of accelerometer data. Those are small devices that you can connect to your body to see what sort of movements workers are making, and statistical methods for physical activity data. If you want to reach out to Stavros after this webinar, you can. We shared also his email. And Stavros, I would like to invite you to start with the first presentation, please.
Yeah, hello everyone. Just give me a second to share my presentation. Yeah, thank you very much for the very nice introduction. I'm Stavros Kyriakidis, as it was mentioned, from the Danish National Institute of Work Environment, and also I'm affiliated at the Southern Denmark University as a PhD student. And today I'm going to talk about identifying the sweet spot of occupational and leisure time physical activity for back pain among elder care workers, a prospective 24 hours accelerometer study. So yeah, let's jump into the presentation. Elder care workers is a professional group that has a high prevalence of back pain, where approximately 51 to 71% report having pain throughout a year. And among those who report having pain, 46% report also having high pain intensity. And when we're talking about high pain intensity from a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the highest pain imaginable, those workers, 46% have 7 and greater pain in the scale. And what are the consequences of back pain among elder care workers? That is approximately throughout a year, 6% go on sickness absence due to their low back pain symptoms, and 27% actually go on early retirement because of their back pain problems. So what are the known risk factors? Some of them actually include manual handlings, and that could be reposition of the patients or turning the patients, which could be harmful for the back, and also working in awkward postures, as well as lifting, when they lift a lot of devices and they move devices around like a nursing ward. However, recently, 24 hours physical behaviors has been also suggested by the research community as a factor, as a risk factor for back pain. And when we are talking about harmful occupational and leisure time physical behaviors, for example, during the occupational domain, we could think an example could be excessive duration of standing or walking without the possibility of having a break, which can be used as a recovery mechanism. And on the contrary, during leisure time, a harmful occupational physical physical behavior can be extensive sitting time, which has also been found to be harmful for the back. And previous scientific reports have made an effort to reduce the harmful occupational physical activity, and on the contrary, they have made an effort to increase the leisure time physical activity to safe standards in an effort to reduce also the low back pain among this population. However, both of those have been unsuccessful, and you might wonder what was the reason. Actually, the reason was that they looked at these behaviors in isolation. So studies have only examined, for example, sitting time and low back pain, or standing time and low back pain. However, they should have examined the combination of those physical behaviors and how all of those behaviors within 24 hours influence back pain. And why it is important to look at the combination of them. It is important to look at them in a combination because actually these behaviors are codependent. And for example, in an 8-hour shift during their work, increasing sitting time, for example, by 5 hours, having sitting time of 5 hours throughout your work, that would leave actually less time for the rest of the activities. Thus, different combination of those activities will influence back pain differently. And the same applies also for the leisure time physical behaviors. Those are also codependent. For example, we have 16 hours of leisure time after our work. And increasing, for example, sleeping time by 7 hours and sitting time by 5 hours, which totals of 12 hours, that would leave like only a few hours to spend on the rest of the behaviors. That's also like during leisure, different combination of them will influence back pain differently. So thus, instead of like trying to reduce the harmful occupational physical activity and increase the beneficial leisure time physical activity, why we don't come up with a new idea where we could identify the sweet spot of them? And the sweet spot of being sedentary, stand, light physical activity, and moderate to vigorous physical activity. But what is the sweet spot? The sweet spot is the concept that actually is defined as the optimal balance between the combination of 24 hours physical behaviors, such as physical activity, sitting time, and sleep, over the course of the workday, which can bring elder care workers to their best musculoskeletal health, and it can reduce their low back pain. But why it is important? Sweet spot and identifying the sweet spot, it is important because actually knowing the exact duration of activities that like people should perform throughout their day would actually provide the possibility to reduce their back pain and subsequently their sickness absence, and also promote a healthy and productive work environment. However, what combination of these activities is the occupational physical behavior sweet spot? The donut pie on the left, could it be that like 30% you should spend on sitting and 40% at standing, and then 30% in total at light physical activity and moderate to vigorous physical activity? Could that be the optimal composition of these behaviors? Or could it be the donut on the right, where you have like more sedentary time, 60%, where like the rest of the activities totals of like to 40%. So could more sedentary time be actually beneficial? And the same apply for leisure. So could it be, looking at the left donut, could it be that like, for example, having 45% of sleeping time and 30% of sedentary be more optimal compared looking to the right donut, where you have like more sleep, approximately 40%, and then 25% sedentary time? We currently don't know what is the optimal composition during work and during leisure. Thus, the aim of the study was to identify the sweet spot of daily durations of occupational and leisure time physical behaviors for best musculoskeletal health in elder care workers. And for this study, we used the doses cohort, which is like a cohort, a Danish cohort, where we have approximately 400 elder care workers from the region of Zealand, which is close to Copenhagen. And data were collected between 2011 and 2013. Data included actually a survey where participants were asked about the socio-demographic characteristic, a health check, where participants were measured their BMI and height and weight, and they did a back endurance test. Accelerometry data, where we measure with those physical activity and physical behaviors. A diary, where actually participants were writing when they got off work and when they went to work and what time they went to bed, so we can identify the domains, such as like occupation and leisure. And then they would receive SMS throughout a year for asking them about their musculoskeletal pain. And more specifically, the accelerometer data, they had to wear it for 4 consecutive days on the thigh, the accelerometer. And then 2 of those days had to be at least working days. And how we categorize the physical behaviors that derive from the accelerometry data. So sit and lie constituted sedentary, stand still and stand with slight movements constituted standing, slow walking constituted light physical activity, and walk fast, stair climbing and running constituted moderate to vigorous physical activity. And time in bed came from the diaries that workers filled in every day, and that was used as a proxy for sleep. Their back pain was measured on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being the worst pain imaginable, and it was measured for 14 months, approximately 1 year. So what we actually observed in the middle, the donut pie, in the middle, you can see the average composition, what was actually observed. So approximately the sample had like 46% of standing time, which was the most dominant activity. So most of their time they were standing, and 38% they were spent on like being sedentary. Looking at the left side, where it's like the sweet spot, that donut, you can see that is the sweet spot composition, meaning that the composition that would predict the lowest back pain. So these behaviors actually included more sedentary time, where it was like 71%, and less time spent on like standing, light physical activity, and moderate to vigorous physical activity. On the right side, we can see the sour spot composition, and that is during work, what would be the composition of activities and physical behaviors that would actually predict the highest back pain. And you can see that like more standing, where it was approximately 66%, and then less sedentary and more moderate to vigorous physical activity would predict higher low back pain. And we applied the same for leisure data. In the middle, we can see what it was observed. So approximately workers spend most of their time like sleeping, 46%, and then they had 34% of sedentary time, and a little bit of like standing and physical activity. On the left side, where we can see the sweet spot composition for leisure, that was like the composition of physical behaviors that would predict the lowest back pain. That actually included less sedentary time, more standing, and more moderate to vigorous physical activity compared to what we saw in the previous slide for work. And on the left side, on the right side, we can see the donut for the sour spot composition. And that was actually the composition of physical behaviors that would predict the highest back pain. So that was actually being more sedentary at leisure and having less physical activity would predict higher back pain. So what is the main message and what did our data show? Actually, this study corroborates the physical activity paradox, where the physical activity paradox states that like physical activity during work can be harmful. However, physical activity during leisure can be beneficial, and it has been found for many outcomes. And now we have like evidence on low back pain. One explanation could be that like at work, sedentary, for example, time might be used as a mechanism to recover for the harmful effects of physical activity. And at leisure, physical activity might be used for muscle activation, which leads to their strengthening due to the possibility of also taking the break, where workers have more influence during their leisure time compared to work. I would like to say also the success of the sweet spot is actually not to make like eldercare workers to rigidly adhere to the composition that we found that it be the best, but actually to make eldercare workers to come closer to that composition and practice those behaviors during work and leisure. But how we can translate this into practice, actually, currently there are no guidelines on how workers should spend their time, where they have been, for example, some guidelines could actually include example of how to increase sitting time, such as eldercare workers could increase their sitting time, for example, while they're preparing the drugs of the patients, or while feeding the elderly, or putting on their socks. The strengths of this study is actually that physical activity data and physical behaviors were collected with accelerometers, which is like a big strength compared to questionnaires. And we have a good 1-year follow-up of low back pain measurements, because we know the pattern of low back pain can fluctuate throughout the year. And limitations includes that we didn't have some other occupational exposures such as lifting and carrying, where we could adjust our regression model. And also we didn't have data on actual sleeping time, where we only use the diary where workers would actually state when they went to bed and when they got off to bed, but that it was used as a proxy for sleep, and it wasn't the actual sleeping time. I would like to say actually thank you to my research team, which they helped me a lot with this research, and this could haven't been possible without their help. And I would like to thank you also for your attention.
Thank you very much, Stavros. Really a very interesting presentation about sweet spot and the sour spot. Now I understand better the differences between those two. In a way, it's quite amazing that sedentary work apparently forms quite a big part of the donut, as you call it, of the sweet spot. You would have expected something else, whereas long-standing hours during work is much more, what I understood from your presentation, part of this sour spot. So quite remarkable, but of course you correlated it with complaints about low back pain, so this is excellent. Now this is based on data from Denmark. Would you say that it would be a bit similar to other European countries, or is this difficult to guess?
I would say it could be difficult to guess, because maybe nursing homes in other countries could have different policies on how people are allowed to, when they're allowed to have their breaks, for example, which could influence how their physical behaviors could actually be during the working day. So it could really depend on the policy that actually individual countries have in their nursing homes.
Yeah, okay, so indeed the focus is on the sector of nursing homes, elderly care, and then long-standing hours in combination perhaps with lifting or other activities would be much more of a burden instead of sedentary work. Would you
Exactly.
agree with that? Yeah, maybe this would be a bit different for other sectors, if I think of office work, for instance, you know. But,
exactly.
Yeah. Quite interesting. We have, before we go to the next speaker, we have one question for you, Stavros. Quite a technical question. I hope you can answer it. I will read it. According to the latest updates of the OGUC protocol, I don't know if you are familiar with it, OGUC protocol, the Chester step test should involve a walking distance of 550 meters within 6 minutes. If this designated area for the test does not allow for this distance of 550 meters, what alternative would you suggest? And would such a choice also depend on the subject's age and physical capabilities? Stavros, I don't know if you are familiar with this Chester step test.
No, unfortunately, I'm not.
Okay.
We haven't used it in this research, so yeah. It could be difficult to respond on this.
Yeah. Okay, maybe then we just leave it for the moment if you are totally unfamiliar with it.
Yeah.
And we have another question, which is, let me see, I have to check. Do you think that the work behavior, this is an interesting one, may be modified by these accelerometers because they know that they are being watched, you know, they are being supervised?
This is actually called in accelerometer data reactivity. So actually workers could modify their behavior because of they know that they're being monitored. However, we monitor them for 4 consecutive days, which actually research has shown that it could be enough days to have a valid
Yeah.
measurements
Yeah.
of the actual behaviors,
Yeah.
physical behaviors. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot, Stavros. Really interesting research. I guess if people visit NFA website, they can get some more information or they can contact you directly. Thanks a lot. Our
Thank
next
you.
speaker is from Germany. Her name is Julia Linke, and she will explain to us in a presentation reference material for non-volatile PAHs, which is polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, if I spell it correctly, and the development, production, and analysis of this. So Julia will explain how they are doing this. She works as a PhD student at the Institute for Occupational Safety and Health in the Department of Chemical and Biological Hazards. At IFA, this is the Institut für Arbeitsforschung, if my German is correct, in St. Augustin, close to Bonn in Germany. After finishing her bachelor's degree in forensic sciences and her master's degree in analytical chemistry, Julia focused her research on environmental chemistry in the context of occupational safety and health. Her scientific interests include chromatographic techniques, chemistry and health, and research oddities. I'm really curious to know this last, what you mean with research oddities. Julia was one of the award winners, one of the 3 award winners last year. She had to catch a flight really soon, so we couldn't give her the PEROSH Young Researcher Award. But again, congratulations, Julia, for that award last year. And we are curious to hear about your research. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much for your introduction and also again for awarding me the Early Stage Research Award. As you said, I had to catch the flight home, so I couldn't receive it in person, which was a bit sad, but my colleagues did a good job of representing me, I hope. So I'm going to head straight into my presentation titled A Reference Material for Non-Volatile PAH, Development, Production and Analysis. So first, I'm going to give you a short overview over what I'm going to talk about today. So I'm going to start with a project introduction before moving on to the workflow that I have developed during my project and that I followed. Afterwards, I will go into the development of the reference material, and I will finish with the results of the first proficiency testing scheme. So I assume everyone is familiar with polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, but just as a short reminder, this class of compounds is known for its carcinogenic and mutagenic potential. They are of particular relevance for environmental monitoring and occupational hygiene, as they occur at different workplaces like coking plants or in construction work. But they also occur in our everyday life in the form of foodstuffs and in car exhaust. They consist of a differing number of benzene rings, and they can be classified as low molecular weight or high molecular weight, depending on the number of rings. Now, the Environmental Protection Agency in the US has compiled a list of 16 PAH, which are commonly analyzed, but this list comprises mostly low molecular weight PAH. However, it has been found that the high molecular weight PAH usually have a high carcinogenic potential. So by only analyzing the 16 EPA PAH, as they are often called, this does not fully represent the carcinogenic potential of a sample. So the solution would obviously be to also incorporate the high molecular weight PAH in routine analysis, which requires laboratories to adjust their analytical methods, which in turn requires a reference material for these analytes as a quality assurance measure. Now, the problem is there are no reference materials for PAH or high molecular weight PAH especially in workplace air samples currently available. So this is where my PhD project comes in, as the aim of my project was to develop a reference material for a selection of PAH, which should then be used in one of our proficiency testing schemes at the IFA. We started by bringing together a task group of several national and international participants. So this is the list of international participants, so a few PEROSH partners in there. And these are the German partners, for example, with the BAuA also present today. Afterwards, we made a choice which PAH were suitable as analytes. This choice was mainly based on carcinogenicity of the compounds, but also on their relevance in workplaces and on the availability of the analytical standards. As a medium, I first used quartz fiber and PTFE filters, but I will talk about this more a bit later. So this is the workflow I developed and followed for the development of a new reference material. So obviously, first you need to identify the research need. In this case, a few scientists in the community proposed that the EPA list should actually be expanded to also include high molecular weight PAH. So this was obviously the kickoff for my project and the kickoff for choosing compounds. In this case, from the vast group of PAH, there are hundreds of compounds. So a selection had to be made, which would also work with the matrix I determined. As I wanted to simulate workplace air samples, I chose membrane filters to hold which would hold the substrate. Next up, I had to establish the production process. This goes hand in hand with the development of analytical methods, because in order to check your production process, you obviously need analytical methods. In this case, for example, to check the content of pH on the filters. This leads to the next step of internal testing. And depending on the results of the internal testing, adjustments of the production process need to be made. This in turn leads to another round of internal testing. Now, once the production process has been established, the external partners can be incorporated, which would then, again, depending on the results, lead to more adjustments, leads to more internal testing, and so on. And the last step for reference material, it can be certified. However, I omitted this step because it's, again, another PhD project. So we developed a first test series that was sent out to the participants for them to analyze in their laboratories with their own methods. These are the results of the first series, which was done with quartz fiber filters. And every lab received 3 filters. And these are the results over all participants. Now, as you can see, for example, for this compound, we have quite a big spread of data, and this also is represented in the relative standard deviation, which was between 11.4 and 37.6%. Even for the first try, this was quite bad, actually, and so we had to do a few adjustments of the production process. Now, these adjustments led to very good results at first, with relative standard deviations below 3% for these 3 compounds, and also a relative standard deviation below 5% for all but 1 compounds, which, considering the relative standard deviation also includes the analytical deviation, is a relatively good result. We also confirmed the stability over 4 weeks, as this was the time frame we had given to the participants for the analysis. So after the internal testing was done, a second filter series was distributed to the participants, and as you can see, the variability already improved quite a bit. But more importantly, the intra-laboratory deviation improved. So the variance of the 3 filters each lab was sent. So this confirmed that the production process was much more stable and more reproducible. Especially the 3 EPA PAH we had incorporated showed very good results. So for example, benzoaparine, which is the leading substance for PAH. And this again shows that the analysis of the EPA PAH is already established. Now, what we noticed from the second filter series and also from our internal testing was that the recovery rates were actually relatively low. We performed an entire master thesis on the influencing factors on the recovery rate of PAH from filters. And we found that the filter material actually has an influence on the recovery rate. So for the third filter series, we switched to PTFE filters. And as you can see, the relative standard deviation already looks much better. We only had 6 data points as outliers, which are these ones, as you probably guessed. But also the deviation from the target value, which is indicated in the black arrow or black line. The deviation was only between 2.9 and 21.7%, which was much better than compared to before. Now, these are a lot of numbers, but don't be intimidated. This is just to show how the variance and the recovery have improved from series 1 to 2 to 3. So for example, you can see for 5-methylcrysene, the variance reached its lowest value in the third series and its highest recovery in the third series again. Now this shows that the production process we had established at this point was suitable to use for the proficiency testing. So here you can see the results of the internal testing, and the relative standard deviation actually fulfilled the requirements we had set earlier, which was below 2%. And also the recovery rate was around 100% for all analytes. We confirmed the stability of the filters over 6 weeks. Again, we had a time frame of 4 weeks, but just wanted to make sure that we did not have a loss of analyte. So these were 2 different concentration levels we had produced. This was also confirmed by the results of the participants. Now, at first glance, this doesn't look that much better, but we actually have a very more narrow range here on the y-axis. And also the relative standard deviation was below 5.1 and 13.5% over all participants. And this is actually very, very good because it's comparable to the already established proficiency testing schemes at the IFA. And this was the first try, so we were very happy with this. And also the deviation from the target value was below 10% for all analytes. Now we only had 5 to 12 data sets per analyte, so we could tell that most labs only analyze the EPA PAH, and we couldn't get that much data for the high molecular weight compounds. So this is something we definitely hope to change in the future. Now, for those of you who haven't seen how a proficiency testing scheme is evaluated, this is for benzoaparine on the lower concentration level. So we have the average over all participants here, the reference value, which was actually the result from the internal testing, and the results for all single labs that participated. As you can see, the 3 filters of each lab are quite close to one another for most labs, except for this one. So we were able to show that the production process is actually fine because most participants had very good results, but we had a few outliers which were most likely due to issues from the laboratory. So this is something we are hoping to help with, so we can identify issues maybe in the extraction process or the analytical process. So we would like to improve the results from the proficiency testing over the next years, hopefully. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Julia. Very good detailed technical presentation. I think you should be a bit familiar in your domain to understand it. Could you explain a bit, I'm not so familiar in this domain to be honest, how, let's say, this new reference material then will be used if we think about the exposure workers would come across to these PAH compounds, so to say. Can it be used to improve these measurements so that it's more careful to see what is the exposure in reality?
In general, reference materials are used to basically confirm that your analytical methods obtain the right values. So if laboratories that, for example, analyze chemicals in workplaces want to measure pH and they are not sure whether their methods are correct, they can use my reference material to check and see if they obtain the right yield.
Yeah, okay, excellent. Thanks a lot. Are we talking about a substantial amount of workers being exposed to this, these chemicals, so to say?
Yeah, they occur everywhere you have a burning process or incomplete combustion processes. So, as I said, coking plants are the most common example, but also tar workers, like roofing workers. And if you expand it even further, you could also include environmental monitoring or monitoring in foodstuffs, so like grilled or smoked foodstuffs.
Yeah, okay. Thanks a lot. Great. We have one question, Julia. Will these materials be made by IFA, your institute, or is it envisaged to transfer the production to an external company?
No, the proficiency testing schemes at the IFA are always performed at the IFA, and the reference materials used are also produced here at the Institute.
Okay, thanks a lot. So for those who want to order, they can contact you.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks a lot, Julia. We will go on to our last speaker, Martin Westhoven. He is from the federal agency in Germany, the BAuA, and his speech is on potentials of artificial intelligence for occupational safety risk analysis. Martin obtained a diploma in computer science at the University of Bonn and a bachelor's degree in psychology at the Fernuniversität in Hagen. And after 8 years in various projects on human-computer interaction, from 2020 on, his work now focuses on the intersection of artificial intelligence and occupational safety and health at the German Federal Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. So Martin, I'm really curious to learn what you have to share with us.
Thank you for the introduction. So I'll just share my presentation. Here we go. And I think this is it. So a bit of a broadly assembled title, but we just dive right in and I tell you what is meant by all of this. So first, let's look at workplace risk assessments. That's one specific type of risk analysis, hazard identification, which is mandatory, at least in Germany. And on the other hand, it's estimated that it's missing for around about half of all working places. So no one ever did some hazard identification risk assessment for these workplaces. And if asked in interviews, most of the people who are charged with that say it's unnecessary, like I know what's dangerous, I don't need to do that in a formal way, or they say it's too costly, either in time or in monetary terms. And so the question is, me coming from the computer science side, how could I help? Since I'm working on the intersection of AI and OSH, it was the question, how could AI help? And among others, it could increase accessibility. And that's something you don't find in the interviews. So the people don't say, oh, I didn't understand it. So they talk about it's unnecessary, I don't need this, because they don't want to say, I didn't understand it. And so we have to look into this. How could we make it more accessible? And the idea here is to take workplace parameters, whatever those may be, and produce risks and measures from that. And that would be nice if we could have that. So the primary target for AI support, from my point of view, should be to identify hazards and assess the risks. But we have some problems as well. So we have complex data and context of workplaces. If we base our decisions on such systems, we have safety relevant events which depend on that. And so the key is also not only to develop such an AI support system, but also to develop an appropriate interaction design to interact with that. So let's have a short look into the problem of interaction design with artificial intelligence. The problem we have is we have complex tasks, and so we would like to have human and retain human control. So we don't want to leave out our human experts, but we want to have the human expert and the artificial intelligence working together to generate a hybrid intelligence. So the human learns from the AI and the AI learns from the human, and they together perform better than each one alone. So there are there's some groundwork regarding that, but but it's few and far between. And so what we did was do some requirements elicitation. We performed expert interviews at the BAuA, at large and small businesses and more, based in grounded theory and socio-technical system design, to just get a better grip on what is happening here, what do they need, how is the current process, and how would they envision a process supported by AI. Then have a look at the data sources. Actually, we have much data on hazards, on risks in work environments, and here from the point of view of industrial plant safety, there is such a collection of different sources where we can get our data from, and perhaps you see much of this is text. Perhaps there's some numerical data in between, but much of this is really just text. And this is available in more or less digitalized form, and more or less structured form. And so we have to look into how can we handle such a thing. And the focus is then on natural language processing. How can I also process unstructured text? And so this is a very broad field, the natural language processing. It goes from translation to summary, or also text generation like ChatGPT does. And there have been advances with deep learning, as we all can see in the day-to-day media coverage. So the data requirements can be reduced by transfer learning and so on, but it's still a complicated topic. And then there's the question, other data types. If I have numerical data, like from environmental sensors, I would perhaps like to integrate this. My my personal point of view on that is combined methods. I will just leave that out of the text processing, do it somewhere else and integrate it by hand somewhere else. But integrative analysis is done in biomedicine, biostatistics, for example, on high-dimensional data sets. And so perhaps there is a way to integrate. And as we see with the generative AI, with multimedia in and output, text, audio, speech, and so on, images, they could be possible in the future, but I cannot wait for it. So I just go over some results which I collected until now. We published a concept for the whole work. We did the requirements and interview results, published only so far only for internal interviews with our practitioners at the BAuA itself. We published an outline for transfer learning on accident descriptions. And we published our work on the interaction design groundwork for AI-based workplace risk assessment. And I just want to highlight one thing regarding the interaction design. There is often the question was, what's exactly the problem with designing interaction for AI? That's actually, these are two attributes. The one thing is the capability uncertainty. So you don't know beforehand how will your data, algorithm, and users perform together. So you just don't know what will be the result if you do that. And the other thing is the output complexity. Do I have some system providing a binary yes or no answer, or do I have something like ChatGPT providing pages and pages of text to me? So it's just the thing we have to grapple with. The problem is, if the system I envision for occupational safety and health would be developed, then we would land in this level 4, where we have high output complexity and high capability uncertainty, because we want to have evolving adaptive systems. So we have to think about, do we really need to go there, or can we perhaps aim for 1 or 2 levels lower? And regardless, central components to address these attributes are to provide some form of explanation engine to just help users understand what is happening, why does the system behave as it does. And the other thing is a flexible simulation environment is coupled to the explanation engine, but you want to provide the user with an environment where you can also try out things and don't have any real world effects with that, but you want to see how would my hazard assessment develop if I include some measurements which are not in place already, and so on. So those are two components to address those central attributes, making interaction design for AI complicated. So I just go over to work in progress things I'm working on right now. This scenario-based design, we are planning a workshop for next week, actually, where we want to again work on what are real world applications and which are the AI functionalities needed for that. And that's actually not that easy to collect, because the practitioners, they cannot really imagine the possibilities AI gives us nowadays, because it's evolving so fast. And so we are doing a special workshop to gather a problem scenario like the current state with personas, processes, and the claim analysis to see how are these scenarios built up and what are the features of that, and then go to an activity scenario by adding AI to the process and see how does that change the process. Can we remove counterproductive features of the current state scenarios, and can we retain the working, the positive features of the scenarios. Another work in progress I'm working on right now is to leverage large language models for risk assessments. Basically, I want to use open source models. There are different models. I would just put some here, roughly speaking. You can attune large language models like Llama 2 or 3 from Meta to our German language, since I'm doing risk assessments or Gefährdungsbeurteilungen in German. We need to be specific to our language, and there are some models addressing that. Although the baseline English models have some German language capabilities, but they are not that good. And what I want to do is to not just ask some model some questions, but we want to add documents to that. So we don't just get some answer, but we provide a source where the model should take hints from. And so we could add the German occupational safety and health context, e.g. by using the handbook for risk assessments or hazard identification processes. It's like a 600 pages handbook published by by our institute. And so that would be something. If we can ask an I have some workplace description, and I give you this handbook, and now please tell me, what do I have to do for my risk assessment in this scenario and at this workplace? What are the 5 biggest hazards, and how can I address them? That would be quite nice, and I have some basic implementation running for that, but it's still too early to show you results. But it will come. So I come to my summary and outlook. AI potential definitely exists, especially regarding accessibility. Data is available mostly in text form, so the focus is on natural language processing. My results so far are based in requirements and design. Work in progress is the in-depth scenarios and the large language model usage for the risk assessments. And my outlook a bit further out is more implementation of prototype tools to just have something to show, to give the practitioners something they can take and evaluate, see what could be done, and then field testing, evaluation, and that should be it. Writing it together, and then I'll have my doctorate degree, hopefully. So that's it from my side, and I'll be happy to take your question.
Okay, you deserve a doctor degree, Martin, I'm quite sure, with this interesting topic. It's really fascinating. We all know, as OSH experts, that risk assessments in the past were indeed these huge paper-based handbooks. You were talking about 600 pages of this Handbuch für Gefährdungsbeurteilung, which was a huge amount of work, of course. And then we got a shift, a wave into digitalization, where we have digital tools. The European agency, for instance, in BAuA has a big project where digital tools are being produced and used and implemented in several sectors. But now apparently we see a future before us where we have a sort of co-pilot, as is this called, or artificial intelligence that can help us to do this. Still, maybe there is a constraint in this way, that is a discussion we see with all AI. Would that lead, let's say, to a quick fix of a risk assessment based on of course, a lot of data that has been fed into the system, and where no longer, let's say, the practitioners walk through the company, see what sort of situations are there, and would, let's say, a labor inspectorate accept this as a valid risk assessment if it's purely based on data, on earlier data. Could you reflect a bit on this, Martin? These sort of constraints, perhaps?
Yeah, it's actually something. The first thing we did was interviews with our in-house OSH practitioners. So not the researchers, but the dudes doing our safety assessments. And what they said was they don't want to give that up. They want to go to the workplaces and have a look. And but the other side of the medal is the supervisors of some department or something who are responsible for the workplace safety. They should normally be able to perform like a basic risk assessment themselves. And for us in a larger institution, that's not really a problem, I think, because we also have our own practitioners. But the numbers I told you in the introduction, like for every second workplace we don't have such a risk assessment, it's actually quite the problem with the smaller companies. So there it goes up to 90 to 95% of workplaces who don't have a risk assessment present. And if we can reach them by making it more accessible, so regardless of testing it in larger companies or something where we have the data and can show it can actually work, but the final goal is to reach to those smaller companies, to make it accessible for everyday users, for people who don't have a background in safety. So the practitioners are still there. But we can make the first step easier, the first step into this world. And so if some employer makes some easy steps into that and gets a response, okay, here are your first steps in making your company safer, but you should ask some experts to look into those two topics and let them help you, then that would be a huge success, but far off in the future, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's a great idea. I can even imagine you were talking about a chatbot, where a small entrepreneur indeed would have easy access to such a chatbot on risk assessment in OSH, maybe on the website of, I don't know, the labor inspectorate or whoever. And then just feed in, this is my working situation, what may I expect, what do I have to take care of? And then based on all the data, all the experience of all the others, he gets a clear-cut answer. And that would be fantastic, especially for the smaller enterprises. Because, in a more classical way, a risk assessment is quite a tedious job, interviewing, observing, and then writing it down, etc., prioritizing. It's quite a task, Yeah, it's really something for the future. Yeah, absolutely. We have a few questions, Martin. So let me see. I saw a question regarding your conclusion, Martin. Do you have an idea of the time horizon? So when such tools could be tested in small and medium-sized enterprises?
Oh, since I do have partners to test them as soon as I have them implemented, so like end of the year, perhaps.
End of the year. But then on a larger scale, how could this be implemented to?
Yeah, that's a bit more of a problem because we as the BAuA cannot be software maintainers. And so we can produce some prototype tools, but we won't be able to maintain a software tool in this dimension. So that would be something for commercial providers of OSH software.
Okay, excellent. Then we have another question, and this is the last one. You mentioned the specific use of AI for accessibility. Do you also see any potential of AI or ML for predicting hazards or exposures of chemicals at the workplace?
Yes, that's something the systems will be doing. So they make the whole topic more accessible, but they are always prediction machines. So they will always predict something for us. And if I have like an input where I state and we use these chemicals and we have these processes, then
You might
even
expect.
a large language model should perhaps be able to give us results on which reactions are going on there and what I'm a bit lost.
What outcomes?
Which chemicals which chemicals are being produced by those processes then?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So yes, predictions as well. I'm right now focusing on the text side of the whole equation. I have a colleague as well who looks into a more like analyzing the environmental data, sensor data from around workplaces. So that would be something a bit more focused on such prediction jobs. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks a lot, Martin. Really interesting PhD research you are doing. And I wish you all three good luck with your PhD. And thanks a lot, Stavros, Julia, Martin, for devoting some time to share with us and the researcher community your findings. We had a bit more than 50 attendants watching your speeches. And thank you very much for joining us at this PEROSH webinar. We ran a bit out of time. I hope you didn't mind. And the presentations will soon be available in our repository, and we will post on that on our website. If you are interested in PEROSH, go to the website and a pop-up screen will appear and you can subscribe for our newsletters and events such as these webinars. So thanks a lot, everybody, especially to our speakers, and I wish you all a very good weekend.